Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I see a couple of you guys in there. We got Arc Hexakin, Ross Z, Future PulseChain Millionaire, Indifference 24. Good to see all you guys at the bottom of the bear market so far. So new local lows. Times are tough, but hey, if you've been around the block before, you guys know this is not our first rodeo. Dips or opportunities. And today I'm here with Waters Above. He's got a YouTube channel. You can check him out if you want. Link is in the description below if you want to go like and subscribe. If technical analysis is your thing, this guy is a straight up pro. Now, personally, I mean, if you guys have followed me for a while, you know I'm not much of a technical analyst. I believe in it insofar as, you know, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I would say I'm more prone to believing in TA, or it becomes more likely to be a self-fulfilling prophecy when the market is mostly retail friendly, because you don't have things like institutions and bots and crazy high frequency stuff, you know, messing with all the charts, and everybody's kind of reading the same stuff, the same tea leaves, if you will. But you know, it can go either way, right? So at the end of the day, prices go up, down, or flat. And I try not to read too much into it, being a long-term investor, but it is pretty interesting, especially when we get into, I think Waters will get into some astrological or Gematria stuff, which I don't even know what that means. So Waters Above, it's good to have you on. I figured we'd just cross-pollinate communities here a little bit, and this is going to be something that my audience probably isn't too familiar with, because they're not used to me doing TA. But it's always fun just to get a different perspective, especially from an outsider too. So, guys in the chat and everybody watching, just so you know, Waters is not really a hexakin at all. So he's just a purely unbiased outside perspective, and I think that's going to be healthy for, you know, a discussion that, you know, we get so wrapped up in our own echo chamber, and sometimes we forget that 99.99% of the population aren't even in crypto, let alone Hex and PulseChain and all this stuff. So welcome, Waters. You want to introduce yourself and maybe talk about your vision on what's going on from a you know, cyclical perspective in this bear market?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you hopping on this with me and introducing me to your community. So my name is Waters Above, and I have a YouTube channel that I run where I go over technical analysis, but I also go through the lenses of using Gematria, which is when you take words and they have an alphanumerical phrase tied to the letters. So I'll get a little bit into that later for your community to give them a little bit of an introduction on what Gematria is. And to answer your question, Gematria comes from the Greek geometry. So geometry, you know, mathematics, etc. And it's used in the Hebrew language. It's very ancient, and it's been something that's been a profound instrument in my work. So I use Gematria, numerology, and also astrology, very basic astrology, actually. I try not to get too out there. I use what is very simple, things like moon cycles, like the full moon and the new moon and eclipses. And throughout the last year and a half or so with my channel, I've been able to show that the market actually cycles accordingly to the moon cycle. So it's been,
You know,
really helpful for.
I read something a long time ago about, you know, statistically even, there is a higher probability of more volatility in the up or down direction on either new moon or full moons. And that was based off of like crap tons of data. So there might be something there. It's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just for crypto. It goes back to pretty much the dawn of time. Like when you start looking at the S&P going back to, you know, the late 1800s, you start to see the cycle is pretty profound. Even the 1987 Black Monday crash that happened, it was during a cycle that we'll get into a little bit later, a specific cycle, but more importantly, it happened on an eclipse. So, and
Wow.
that was a legendary washout in the market. So, yeah, so I utilize Gematria, numerology, and astrology and tie it into technical analysis. And I actually agree with what you said at your introduction about how TA could be pretty much utilized to describe someone's feelings and emotions towards a specific asset or crypto or altcoin that they enjoy or they have some sort of affinity with, and that's not what it's for. It's actually to have an unemotional, unbiased outlook of how the market is behaving. And a lot of the time, the way that TA is taught is through the lenses of emotion. And of course, it's a lot easier to sell people on whatever's going on in the market, whether it be clicks or likes or subscribers, or that's the kind of stuff that these TA channels like to focus on, and not really giving that unbiased, unemotional perspective on the market. So again, I actually don't know too much about HEX. I'm really excited to dive into the charts and kind of look a little bit deeper into what's going on. And I would love to have you actually teach me a little bit more about the company. And yeah, so
Right.
besides
Well,
that,
it's
that's
not
what
a
my
company, but yeah, I will. I'll be happy to.
absolutely. So yeah, regarding the cycles, you were wondering about what exactly?
Well, I mean, there's cycles and everything, right? And I do agree, like, volatility is cyclical. All that simply means is, people go from phases of built up, pent up price suppression, and then eventually the price has to bounce either way. Bear markets and bull markets are obviously cycles. But then there's these greater things like shemitah cycles and some of this more woo woo stuff, moon cycles and everything that people don't think about that, from your perspective might actually have an impact on price. But I'm wondering where you see us in the macro scale, because obviously it's pretty clear to me that macro is affecting the price of HEX, the price of everything right now. Everyone's
Yes.
anticipating a recession. But as we know, I mean, I've been around the block. I've got a freaking tattoo on my hand representing cycles, it's Ouroboros. And
Mm,
it's just something that's just a fact of life, right? And so once you've seen it so many times, you can have conviction and faith that, this is not going anywhere, guys. It's coming back. It's going to be okay. But I'm wondering where you see us in the timeline. Do you have any time predictions?
yeah, absolutely. So, what you mentioned before about the shemitah, that's very powerful. That's what my work has been focused on for the past year and a half to 2 years. And I exposed this a while back, getting people prepared for this exact time. So, for your audience who's unaware, the shemitah is practiced in Judaism. It's within the Hebrew calendar, and every 7 years is when the event happens. So, if you study Judaism, you know they really like the number seven. The Sabbath day is the seventh day according to their calendar. And then on the seventh year, you have the Sabbath year, and that is the Shemitah. So the reason why this is so profound is because if you go back every 7 year cycle, you have a massive issue in not only finances, but you could see, upheaval, change of empires, power cycles, war. I mean, pretty much everything that we've seen that's been monumental in reshaping society as a whole, or regarding big price action in the markets, has been definitively on or around a Shemitah year. So, we are currently in a Shemitah year right now
Mm.
until the end of September. And when we study the cyclical nature of the Shemitah, we actually typically have an all time high within the year of Shemitah. And then we have the biggest collapses ever after it ends. So we could see sometimes leading into Rosh Hashanah, which is the pretty much the start and the end. Rosh Hashanah is typically in September, and that's the Hebrew New Year for people who are unaware. Well, after the end of Shemitah is when we cyclically see the biggest market crashes of all time, or the biggest changes in society of all time.
Whoa, so the worst is yet to come. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely. So, to let people know of a couple examples in modern times, in 2015, we had a Shemitah that was a big issue in the Chinese and Asian markets. It didn't affect the United States as much, but we did see a correction at the end of Shemitah. So, that's what matters most. Now, if you go back to 2007, 2008, you'll see that was the housing market crisis and huge issues with the banking system. Then you go back 7 years before that, you have the dot-com bubble, and you also have 9/11. So you can see that there's two recent events, not only the housing bubble, but you also have the dot-com bubble. And those two things are actually pretty noticeable in today's markets. I believe cryptocurrency and the altcoin market as a whole, considering it has 20,000 coins that are essentially useless, and the uselessness of those coins is diluting the projects that are good through sentiment and through the fundamental and the way that people decide to invest. So, and that's something we could probably get into a little bit later. But with that being said, I see a very similar environment in cryptocurrency as a whole, very similar to the dot-com bubble. And also, I see an issue with housing, and housing has definitely been overinflated during the time of the pandemic. And then after that, I believe we started to see housing sort of top out around 4 to 6 months ago, and now it's on the decline. And those are all signs that banks are going to start to have issues because banks make money by selling you money. So less loans are being taken out and less credit cards are being opened. And that means there's less interest for banks to collect. And if people don't pay attention to all of this stuff and they only pay attention to what's going on in their individual community of a altcoin they like, and what the Federal Reserve is doing, like, I mean, you're going to be missing out on the bigger picture. So I feel like most of the energy right now in cryptocurrency is towards the community that people enjoy, and then also towards what the Fed's doing. And if you only pay attention to those things, you're really going to be shaken out when September turns around.
Yeah, yeah, man, that is kind of scary. But hey, again, like if you're prepared for this, if you're anticipating, prices can always go lower than you think, but there can always be more pain than you thought possible, especially for a lot of the new guys that might be watching this, you know, for their very first cycle. Maybe this is their first foray into investing. There's a big world out there besides HEX. And although we love it, although it's got great product market fit and a great community that simply just won't let the coin die. I mean, it's just not, you know, losing's not an option for HEX, but the price can go low. And, you know, you got to flip the script on yourself, and all your emotions are telling you, you know, sell, sell, sell. You know, you have to see the longer term future and all the potential of where we have left to go. But if you want to pull up some technical analysis for all the TA guys out there that love this stuff, Waters Above is a pretty expert TA dude. So I will let you pull up the HEX chart if you don't mind, and just kind of talk about what you're seeing on this chart.
Absolutely.
This is all Greek to me.
Yeah, no worries. So, first and foremost, I want to let everyone know that I'm unbiased towards what's going on here. What I'm seeing in the charts was me just quickly being able to analyze what's happening from a macro perspective and to take note of what Hex has done in its performance over the last couple of years. And with that being said, you mentioned something very important, the idea that it could go lower. So with this presentation right now, I'm just going to let you guys know, like, this isn't to hurt anyone's feelings or to get people emotional. Like, at the end of the day, when a coin moves up, what is it? Has it gone up 700,000 to 1,000,000%? When a coin has
Yes.
when a coin has this type of incredible, you know, performance, well, something has to give, and eventually some of the gains need to be given up. And I think this is around the time right now, over the past 6 months, where you're starting to see who the true investors in this project are. You're starting to see who the real ones are. And that's important because you need to take note of that sentiment. The people who are actually here to become investors are not worried about what I'm about to present you. You're just looking at it as an opportunity. And on the same thing, if we do get a rebound rally, you kind of have to control your greed because, like I just said before, into September, October, November, this could become very shaky. And due to the lack of regulations in this sector as a whole and just so much going on in the world stage, I just do want people to consider financial security right now. Like, protect yourself, especially if over during this time period you over leveraged or put yourself in high exposure to this specific project. And that goes to anything, right? When you're developing a thesis for investment, you really want to be a lot more careful when you're playing around with an asset class like cryptocurrency. So with that out of the way, what you're seeing right here is a lot of, you know, confusing stuff, and I just want to break it down piece by piece. So what allows me to do TA very simply is something called a Wyckoff method. And that's something that I share with the world to teach people who have zero idea of what technical analysis is and get them prepared with a solid foundation. So one of the biggest reasons why people are scared or like they don't want to get into technical analysis is because it looks like too much. It's overwhelming, right? So when we do Wyckoff method, it allows us to actually know what's going to happen without getting too caught up in the indicators. So the first thing I want you guys to focus on is a couple of things. One, this parabolic advance into a top, and at this top you immediately have a sharp sell-off and then this rebound. This moment right here is very important to take note of because right here we would call this a bull trap. Okay.
Yep.
People
Lower high.
Exactly. And people would anticipate this to go higher, but they disregarded, like, this has been moving up in a straight line for months. Right. And if you were to take
Yeah.
something like the RSI indicator, you would see, like, okay, we're pretty overheated at this peak. But I don't want to get super technical. Just in Wyckoff method, we would call this area the buying climax, meaning it's the climax of buyers. There's no more buying left and it's exhausted. Then right here on this sharp sell-off, you have something called a selling climax, where the selling after a quick, momentum to the downside is exhausted. Now it needs to have a rebound. And this rebound rally, we would call an automatic reaction or an automatic rally. Okay. So that's basics in Wyckoff. And if you were to pull a fib retracement from this all-time high down to this swing low right here, you typically see your automatic rally somewhere between the 0.5 fib, and in crypto, it could go as high as the golden pocket. So that's the 618 to the 786 Fibonacci retracement level. Now, in English, this just means that after you have a sharp, sell-off after hitting a top, you have a rebound rally, and now you have what's going to come next. And this is what's really brilliant about Wyckoff method, is it allows people to be a lot safer when these bounces happen, because they typically like to de-risk at these lower highs. They are much more sophisticated traders, the people who study Wyckoff method. When we're through sentiment analysis, most people actually get caught up in this and think it's going to continue to a new all-time high, and that's a really that's a harmful thing, but it is what it is. Now, when we return back to the selling climax lows, which happened right here for HEX somewhere around March, when it broke below the low in the structure, I'm going to zoom in. This was when it got it was a warning sign, let's just say. So you have here your low. You see this, you started closing daily candles below that low. That's a signal to me that this thing is going to probably continue a downtrend. And what that led to was this moment right here, which was another successive lower high. Now, this is where it could get a little bit more complicated, but I feel it might be helpful for your audience. Is where are we going next? Like, where is the next downside target? So what we do, I'm going to delete this fib right here to make it nice and clean for you guys. I pulled a Fibonacci retracement in reverse. So it's a bearish retrace from this wick low to this rebound. So when you pull it in reverse, it's going to give me the 1618, which is the golden ratio. It's going to give me it, but instead on the downside. Okay. Now, this allows me to see, like, how bloody can it get? What's the blood in the streets? And in my opinion, based on technical analysis and what this coin is capable of doing as an altcoin, 4 cents is about as deep as I would anticipate, and it could go slightly lower on a wick. But most likely, if it was to close daily candles, it would be a bounce off of this 1618. And here's the good news. If it goes all the way down to that level right there, the quickness of the buyback will be very, very rapid.
Right.
So
and that quickness can be accelerated by the fact that a lot of liquidity in this market has been deliberately removed for that purpose. We like to shake out the maximum amount of sellers possible as fast as possible. And so we kind of adjust liquidity in HEX. I mean, it's not necessarily high liquidity or low liquidity is good or bad. It's much more gray than that. And so when things are down bad like this, especially before the big PulseChain launch, and especially after we had the rally, for your audience that might not know, the narrative behind the rise up from 10 to 20 cents was anticipation of PulseChain launch followed by further delays. But again, that's recency bias, and some people would argue it doesn't matter what news story you want to attach, what narrative you want to attach. It's just the ebbs and flows of human behavior. But yeah, I can easily see it wicking strongly down and then coming right back up, because we've got a lot of buyers and long-term stakers just itching to buy at those extremely low prices that are dollar cost averaging in.
Right. So I'll tell you guys another little piece of, I don't want to call this hopium, but it sort of is. Now, the bigger idea is, when do we reach this 4 cent, 5 cent level? Like, when could that happen? How do we time it? And now with my work of using the more esoteric, principles of Gematria, numerology, and astrology, I'm aware that astrologically, there's going to be big energy entering after the end of September into the eclipse of October and November. I don't want to confuse too many people, but I'm just letting you know the likelihood of entering the 4 cent, maybe even slightly lower 3 cent area is more likely after September. It's more likely later in the year, which means that, and this is why I called it hopium, there's actually an opportunity for a premature relief rally into probably as late as August, and then you would have that be either another lower high, or it would just be a double top fake out on this high right here. And
Right.
then you would probably lead into November like this. Now, that's why I said spring, but I also called it a macro selling climax, because when I go like this, and if I was to look at it on like a weekly chart, this would look like a blow off top. And
Mm.
this sell off right here from this closure high down to this level right there, the 1618, is about 92 to 93% down. And the reason that's possible, and I know this, and anyone who's been in this market for a while should accept this fact, even Ethereum lost 95% of its value after the all-time high of 2017.
I
And
love that you know that, because we preach that all the time, and you're one of the only other people I've ever heard just being honest about the magnitude of which crypto falls 85 to 90, even 95%, quite often, every couple of years.
yeah,
And it's more about the ones that get back up.
Amazon did the same thing during the dot-com bubble, and if you
Thank
bought
you.
during that crash, and you held all the way until today, you're probably a multi-millionaire easily with a very small amount of liquidity, dollar cost averaging over a long period of time. So one last thing I'll show from this perspective, just for your audience, we gave them the blood in the streets and end of the year kind of levels. So
Yep.
I would just, this is me kind of being a magician here. I'm just going to pull a fib from this all-time high down to this extreme all-time low. And this would tell me that if there was what's called a macro automatic rally. So here you would have your buying climax. And if we were to do this macro, you would switch this level, just assume that this AR, I would be kind of floating over to later into 2023. Then you would have something like this, where you're probably going to come up to the 236 level, and that would be the prior trading range that we were in when we started to break down. So this is kind of words of wisdom, guys. If you see this coin rebound soon up to levels like 20 cents, don't I just don't want people to think that it's gonna like keep going. In this environment that we're in right now, you have to be safe.
Right.
Start to at least consider de-risking your initial investment if you're somebody that can't afford to wait 4 years or 3 years. So I don't want to get too into the macro timing of all of this, but I did give you and your community a pretty solid outlook onto how this can all play out over the next 6 to 10 months, even maybe the next year.
That's great, man. I love everything you're saying in terms of seeing the bigger picture, and not a lot of people understand these long-term macro conditions and just the cyclical nature of everything. But you guys, you heard it here. Could be in for a pretty rough summer, and if we do get that mini pump, sometime this summer or before September, my guess is that the narrative sauce to put on top of that would just be the PulseChain launch when we get the real date. We haven't gotten an actual launch date yet, but it's going to be coming sooner or later. And people are going to be probably rushing to buy HEX during that time span to get their copied coins over on PulseChain. And we'll talk about what PulseChain is in a little bit, but it's basically going to be airdropping any ERC20 coins that you have in your wallet, as long as you hold your own private keys. And people are obviously speculating that because HEX users are going to be the primary users of PulseChain, it's going to drive a lot of buying pressure in the short term, right? Which could get us up to that 14 to 20 cent range again, temporarily, before more pain and death.
This coin loves to do these very sharp buybacks. Like I've looked at the chart enough. You were nice enough to send me this long-term chart that I was looking at, and we'll get into in a moment, but it goes all the way back to when it was like 4 zeros, like fraction of a penny. And during that, you could pretty much keep up with this coin. It's doing 70 to 80% dips along the way for a 1,000,000% gain. So
yeah, yep,
absolutely mind-blowing.
As if it wasn't volatile enough for you. We heard you like volatility, so we added some volatility to your volatility. So yeah, I mean, that's just HEX though, and it's a crazy game, and it's not for the weak of heart, pun intended. And it's really just it's for people that see the long-term vision. To me, it's about the ratio of believers to non-believers, or stakers to traders. And this to me is also just the ultimate shakeout, essentially, of anybody that bought high and is selling low because their time preference is too low. Simply put, I mean, if you're staked out, and the minimum you should be staked is 1 year, but I usually prefer ladders of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then you could fill them in, every semi-annually or however you see fit. But you got to hold something for a period of years with an investing mindset. And the cool thing about HEX is that the APY levels basically allow you to save yourself from yourself. So they pay you in HEX up to 40% APY for an average length stake and more for the longer term stakes up to maybe 60%. And so you're paying yourself to save yourself from your own psychology, and you're getting it's basically negating some of the losses. So if you're earning 40% APY and the coin dips 80%, well, the effective dip to you is only 40%, right? Because you made some of that back, and you're not planning on selling that till the next bull cycle anyway. So that's what I'm trying to always teach people, is that long-term vision. Take profits, obviously, sell your yield, preferably at the highs if you can.
Yeah.
But and these dips are opportunities. And so
Yeah,
we got a lot of
you need to strategize. Like, the one bigger thing that I see that lacks in certain communities that are focused around one particular project is they don't chat too much about the strategy of de-risking and the strategy of maintaining, posture according to these 80% incoming dips. So if you can develop a strategy, either that be technical or just solely through the amount of income you make versus your investment plan. I mean, it really is it's an individual's journey. But when we speak this language with some people, they don't even know what I'm talking about with the last 10 seconds of what I just said. So they're so disorganized in their practice, and they're just blindly going along with whatever is happening on YouTube or Twitter. And I really urge people, like, the beauty of learning a skill, and it doesn't even have to be TA. It could just be something as simple as focusing on, like, well, I make this amount of money per every 2 weeks, and I should put 10% of it towards investing in this project. I do this over, 26 weeks a year or whatever. And now I have some sort of a plan. I'm not putting too much money in so that if it does have this 80% correction, I'm like hurting and complaining and screaming and bitching. You need to do something that's best for you. And
yeah, and
when
get your
the
mind off of
project
social
is
media as well. I mean, if it's really taking a toll on you, and if you're too emotionally invested in the day-to-day price movement, and to the point where it's going to psychologically, pull at
Mhm.
you, and you won't be able to live your normal life, that's when you need to hit the drawing board. That's when you need a course like Waters Above or my own to learn either mindset and investing mindset, or what Waters teaches, which is an intense technical analysis. Having a plan will just offload a lot of that mental pressure. and
Yeah, I
and
mean,
you'll
that's the biggest thing that I personally focus on is mindset. So even in my advanced trading course, which is solely for people who are looking to trade and use TA for trading, like, I go over the mindset necessary to just safely and conservatively trade, because I see people that they invest and then they lose everything with coin, that they invested in. They're not losing dollars. They're buying a coin like, Ethereum, and then they start leverage trading it, and then they get liquidated, and now they're back to zero, when you
terrible.
could have just held Ethereum for 5 years and it would have appreciated in price, you know? But I don't want people to think that, you need to be taking courses and stuff, but definitely, like, learn something from somebody that you resonate with, you know? That's what matters most. And make sure you're learning a skill. Watching content all day is not going to help anyone. It's how you
That's
utilize the content you watch that matters.
That is some beautiful words of non-financial advice, man. You said it very elegantly. That's kind of my message as well. But I'm seeing a lot of dots on this chart, man. What are all these dots?
Yeah, beautiful. So we did talk a little bit about the lunar cycle, and right here on my chart, you're going to see white dots and black dots, and the white dots are full moons, and the black dots are new moons. So essentially, you're seeing here proven that every
Jeez.
every cycle top for Hex, and I try to help people with this because when they find my work, they want to debate this idea, and you probably know by now I'm very calm. I'm just here to help, but it's
Yep.
undeniable, man. Every dip and every pump that every coin pretty much gets is within a 5-day window of a new moon or a full moon. So just to quickly explain what's happening here, 5 days before or after a new moon, you typically see every high or a bullish market. And then 5 days before or after a full moon, you typically see a bearish market. There is an exception, and that is eclipses. So when you have an eclipse, there is a little bit of a change of energy. But just to keep things very, very basic here, you can see that this first parabolic advance, and if you can see, it's during this being green, and I have it actually adjusted so that it's green when it's in a bullish energy and it's red when it's entering a bearish energy. So I made this super simple for me, and it's a free indicator on TradingView. Anyone could add it. You might just want to adjust it the way that I have it set up. But with that being said, look, it topped out perfectly on a new moon. right here, this peak around a new moon, this all-time high around a new moon. And then I do know, according to the chart that you sent me, it is slightly different regarding when it hit these all-time highs. It's within reason though, but
Right.
still, it's beautiful. Look at this rebound right up to that new moon. Even here, new moon
Dude,
before the bigger sell-off. And
this
this is really a good thing for people who are new to TA. So in my course, like I teach two basic things that I think will get so many people ready for doing TA on their own. The first thing is Wyckoff method, and the second thing is how to use this lunar cycle. And just those two tools right there could set you up for how the whole next month is probably going to go. So I've had people like in droves, hundreds of emails from people saying, wow, Jordan, like ever since I started using this moon cycles indicator, I just do 2 swing trades a month and I'm pretty much set. So it's been beautiful to hear that feedback for anyone who like invests in my educational material and how it pays them back. It's really beautiful.
Man, this it's freaky how well these moon cycles line up. Like my logical brain wants to say, oh yeah, that's just a bunch of woo-woo hippie BS. And but intuitively, I secretly I love believing in all this stuff, but I can't like bet the farm on it. I have to get back to basics. For me, it's just mindset that really keeps me stable and grounded during these times. But it is pretty bizarre to see how crazy like these highs and lows really line up with the moon cycles. But yeah, but getting away from simply TA, I mean, HEX in itself is a product that encourages long-term holding as well. So it is a product that's designed to change your psychological behavior. By long-term staking, it's essentially staking with consequences, right? So not only is it a coin with a great website, incredible community, growing every day by all metrics, growing other than the price, obviously, and eccentric billionaire founder that doesn't necessarily hurt or help. I mean, depends who you ask. But the product itself, it addresses basically a $1 trillion market, the CD market. It's a high yield savings account. But unlike other staking coins, it actually makes you put your money where your mouth is. It actually gets you locked in. So the total value locked in HEX is actually locked, because if you try to unstake it early, you get heavily penalized. If you serve up to only half your stake, you'll get penalized off your principal. And if you serve 50 to 100% of your stake, you'll get penalized out of your yield or your interest. But it's very attractive to hold as a store of value, right? Because we know cryptocurrency, narrative-wise, it tried to be digital peer-to-peer cash. That didn't do so great. Ended up being digital peer-to-peer gold, right? So it's
for some things, yeah.
Or store of value, rather, right? So Bitcoin
Yep.
can be gold, and that's totally fine. Hexicans were crazy enough to think that, hey, why can't we just do store of value even better? And how do you do that? Well, you basically have HEX utilizing the time value of money. So you replace the CD, you encourage delayed gratification. And what you have is this community of people locking up their coins for an average of 6.6 years, I believe, right now.
What?
And yeah, and they're getting longer every day because of this T-share system, which I go into on my channel. It's a little too complicated to cover right now, but for anybody new, this share system basically abstracts the idea of compound interest, because compound interest would be too hard to calculate for Ethereum. HEX is able to basically have that one layer abstracted. So although HEX is inflationary at a very constant 3.69% per year, that number was also intentional. The T-share, the number of shares in the system is deflationary, and that becomes more and more scarce over time. So it's a battle for purchasing shares. And basically, when you stake your HEX, you buy shares. And when your stake is over, you burn your shares and you mint back your new HEX. And so people, what we're finding is they're locking up their HEX for longer and longer to try to keep the same amount of shares that they have in the system, to try to keep their place in the system. And it becomes, it's game theory, right? It becomes this game of trying to keep your place, and it creates a very fanatic community along the way.
Do you
including
think
myself.
do you think that what you just explained in the past minute is understood by a majority of HEX investors?
See, that's what we're finding out right now. I think we're seeing the people that didn't understand what they were holding. They're the reason for these big red candles. But the beautiful thing is you will always have this base layer of stakers, right? So Trace Mayer, he once coined the term holders of last resort for Bitcoin. We have stakers, right? We have stakers in HEX, and that's basically holders of last resort on steroids, because not only are they holding and they're locked in and they can't sell because they volunteered. Now, staking is not mandatory, right? But they volunteered to forego, the opportunity cost of liquid coins. But they're expressing their belief in the system for an average of multiple years. And many people have staking ladders, right? Which is similar to a CD ladder where you make multiple stakes. So you always have something coming out. So you don't have to time the market because, timing the market is better than timing the market and all that. But
I think like what I'm doing and sharing, I think is the closest thing that we can get to effectively timing a market, but still at the end of the day, nothing beats a long-term time horizon and developed investment thesis that's based around your particular financials.
Yeah. And so HEX encourages all that stuff, encourages long-term thinking. We are very anti-trading, at least the real Hexicans are. But, we're obviously seeing a shakeout of people that thought they were going to make a quick flip or something like that because bear markets come and HEX allows you to save yourself from yourself.
So I want to ask a question. I hear around multiple communities that HEX is known for creating all these millionaires and all this. Well, in order to make money off of something, you need to sell it, right? So I'm wondering, like, what's the fine line between this upcoming protocol of staking and the certificate of deposit ideology on the blockchain, and where's the incentive system besides just talking about flashy APY over the long term? Like, I'm wondering, because I do think a majority of people who are unsophisticated and new to crypto, and maybe they don't have enough money, so they're going to gamble on anything to try to make a quick buck, like you just said. Those individuals are not going to care about all this, information regarding the protocol that you just explained. Like, I find it very interesting. So I'm kind of wondering where you stand on that. Like, there's going to be two players, right? The one who wants to make money and the one who wants to secure financial wealth over the long term.
Right. And we try to convert one from the other, right? We try to convert those short-term thinkers with the flashy marketing. We're one of the only communities that is openly admitting to you, hey, you're in crypto because you want to make money. Whether you want to cover that up with technical complexity and say, oh, my shiny new object does this or that, we're all here to get rich, right? And that's the underlying greed is the underlying motivator of all this stuff. But it's also conveniently a financial revolution, disguised as an internet Ponzi scheme. So people get mad at HEX. People get mad that we market so aggressively, but really we just believe in our coin. And I think a lot of people find it hard to believe that there's a community with this much conviction in their actual product and what they're shilling. Like, I believe in my coin. I have 15-year stakes. I also have a stake coming out, next month. So, I'm laddered all the way up. And because a lot of us did get in early enough and we put our time in the market, I didn't pull out my first stake till just over 2 years, right? Because I figured, hey, why not just wait 2 years and see what happens at minimum? And so you're seeing a lot of people are actually cashing out. There's a whole testimonials page on hex.com if you want to see real people buying real things and really changing their life. People are not only just buying Lambos and Rolexes, but they're paying off their college debt, paying off their mortgages, retiring their parents. Some people built, a mental health facility, or some people are doing clean water initiatives in Africa. It's crazy when you see people get wealthy and they shift to that abundance mindset. Typically, people aren't sociopaths and they tend to want to help other people as well along the way.
Correct.
And so we can actually quantify how many paper millionaires we've made by the league system. I believe it's somewhere in the thousands, maybe 2,000 or maybe more people that are technically millionaires. But you do see people actually taking some profits along the way and using that to achieve their financial freedom and achieve their goals and their visions for their personal life. But, it's also kind of a self-fulfilling feedback loop, which is a beautiful thing, because a lot of times when something makes somebody rich, they're so happy about it that they want to, shout on the mountaintops to the whole world about what just happened to them.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
like
they
the
become marketers and promoters.
Yeah, it's like the passing the baton syndrome. Like when you become wealthy off of something, when we're talking about a cycle, like if you bought Bitcoin, let's just say in 2018, and you sold it in 2021, and you just so happened to catch the top, and then you started running around with a, cardboard box sign telling everyone to buy Bitcoin because it helped you. Well, you're helping people, quote unquote, helping people buy the top.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So it's
we need to describe the cyclical aspect of it. We need to say, like, hey, you can dollar cost average if you did buy in that 40-50 cent range. I'm sorry, but if you do have a long enough time preference, you can DCA, and your average price on the way for HEX to go to $10, it's not going to matter whether you got in at 40, 30, 10, or 5. we're going to be looking back on this time laughing. But it is a tough sell, right? When people just get, that's what Bitcoiners have been doing, and alienating people on the way down and the way up. So it's not just a smooth ride, right? It's not you just buy
Yeah,
it and take the elevator to the moon.
we all, as people who are helping this world with our truth, like, we need to do better at bringing people together, and like, that's been my mission, and that's why I talk about Bitcoin as kind of the market compass, along with Ethereum, and sometimes my words on XRP. And I'm willing to talk about any altcoin. I do it every week on my Patreon podcasts. But with that being said, like, I've noticed that the emotional connectivity that some people offer towards a digital token that moves up and down on a screen, it could really make people become quite divisive in their communications. And I would love for the Hex community to, like, be of open towards my work, and the same thing how I am towards you explaining Hex and everything that's going on with it. Because I typically never talk to people who specifically focus on one project. And I think it's been a very, chill dialogue, and we're all kind of learning in this journey.
I agree, man. We need to extend an olive branch, a lot of us in the community, towards other communities, first of all, and other ways of thinking. And even me myself, I'm getting involved in this, something I can't talk about, but it's a bridge project, bridge protocol, that I'm hoping one day we'll be able to bridge different communities together from a technical aspect, by easing the transition between blockchains like Solana, Ethereum, Avalanche,
Right.
and PulseChain.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, like, a lot of people that are new to my work, and they're brand new to a lot of the ideas that I speak of, they will show up and they'll see me talking about Bitcoin, and they'll assume that that's all I talk about, and that I'm a Bitcoin maxi and yada yada yada. And I'm very straightforward where I say that I use Bitcoin as the market compass. Like, it is undoubtedly the direction that the market will go. Like, if we are seeing a true decoupling of any specific thing, it won't last for long. It'll eventually equilibrate to Bitcoin. And we see that that keeps happening time and time again. And I know during an alt season, especially last alt season, because it was very, very elusive, people thought that it would just keep going and going and going after we saw things like Aave. And, I mean, Theta went up like 80,000. I mean, it was wild, right? Everyone
Yeah.
has probably seen the charts by now. But with that
Yep.
being said, those are the times where people become the most divisive, and there's the least amount of teamwork, because it's like, oh, look at the coin I'm in is doing so well, and the coin you're in isn't. I mean, I vividly remember back when Bitcoin broke out to 60K, and Ethereum was boring. It was like, it wasn't moving, and it was
Yep.
because people didn't know about Bitcoin dominance. They weren't aware of how liquidity shifts through the market. And I remember when I was exposing the idea that, well, ETH will catch up, and when it catches up, it'll be within a hair of the market cap of Bitcoin. And during that 3 months it took for that to play out, people again were getting, they were just impatient. And in crypto, because it's 24/7, 365, and you have these massive volatility swings, people lack patience. So I think, like, the big takeaway of being in any community regarding blockchain and crypto, and even Hex, how many years has it been traded? 3, maybe?
Only 2.5, coming up on 3
Right.
in November.
Right. So what I urge people to do is, if you want to learn the skill of how to read charts and all of that, go back to the longest chart history you have available to you, which is the Bitcoin chart. Learn through the longest chart horizon that you have, and you're going to take away so much to look towards the future of what Hex could possibly do.
And that's exactly what a great community member of ours has done for us, that I just pulled up on the screen, called lookintohex.com. It's sort of like lookintocrypto.com, but
Oh, that's
we
awesome.
actually we like to compare the ROI from launch of various different currencies, and you can actually see Hex outpaced Bitcoin and Ethereum's rise in their first year and a half. Now it's obviously correcting to the point where they're all kind of converging, but
Yeah.
we'd love to see
And
that
that
trend continue.
That makes sense, though, because if you take the just one or two actually great examples, if you take 2 years ago, there was a lot more liquidity in the market being printed out of thin air. Also, if you take into consideration the amount of technology we have available to us right now compared to 2013, like when Bitcoin launched in the first 2 to 3 years, people weren't walking around with cell phones where they could just buy crypto on Coinbase.com app.
Yeah.
So now it's a lot easier for the coins to appreciate at such a rapid rate. Not to take anything away from Hex, I'm just letting people know that this is one of the big catalysts towards why certain cryptos have done what they've done. But I do believe that Hex was an isolated situation where it appreciated at a rate that, I mean, some might be considered on, some would consider maybe unsustainable, and that's why it's correcting at the way it's doing. And perhaps it needed this correction to rebuild, and put some chart history in.
I think it did. I think it does currently, and it is currently experiencing the correction. However, the counter argument to the Hex will just simply die like all the other altcoins is simply the staker class. I mean, the metrics of stakers, active stakers, is growing every day, and it's almost at the 100,000 people mark. So there's 100,000 of us that have pledged to hold up the price by just launching our coins into the future and foregoing the ability to spend them and earn
Well,
interest.
you said that the average stake was 6 years. I mean, how could this coin go anywhere if you have so many people? So
Oh yeah, you're
the
stuck with us for a while.
no, I mean, I don't know why anyone wants projects to die. It's very dramatic talk. It happens during the start of alt season too, where you hear people
Yeah,
saying there's going to be this new ETH killer like every week. It's like there's a new 100 like thousand view
right.
video talking about. So yeah, people need to move away from that type of behavior, and I think the only reason people might feel that way about Hex specifically is because of Richard Hart, his personality. So they want to see him fail, and they
Yeah.
forget that there's a difference between the people who are invested in the project and the person who's just the head face of the project.
Dude, you're nailing all my talking points right now, and I don't even think you realize. But hold on, we have a crazy, amazing tip in the comments. John Wick, my God, man, that is incredibly kind, sir.
Oh
Thank
wow.
you very much. 85% dip from the highs. Shake them out before PulseChain launch means sell pressure on both chains. Feels similar to Big Payday, which I could talk about if you want. Front running dump, November 2020. Buy the rumor, sell the news event. Have the fundamentals changed? Obviously, no. Has your investment thesis changed? To me personally, no, not at all. And yeah, that's a great words of wisdom, John Wick. He's a pretty smart dude. He's actually in the traditional financial system. I think he's a investment advisor. And so, I mean, even, real world people are starting to see, the power of this product and how it really was designed to be a store value that rises in price faster than Bitcoin. I mean, it's a lofty goal, right? But like you said, we're not necessarily competing. Just like PulseChain isn't necessarily competing with Ethereum. It's a multi-chain future, and we can all be interoperable with each other. What PulseChain is really doing is it's a literal clone of Ethereum that's was designed to save hexagons from gas fees. And now anybody can come build on it. And the beautiful thing is we're copying the entire system state of the blockchain too, which to my knowledge, no blockchain has ever done this, where they're copying all the smart contracts on ETH and all the coin balances on ETH. So for whatever coin, let's say you're holding Chainlink on Ethereum, well, when the PulseChain fork happens, you're going to have, P-Link on PulseChain. Now, will that actually be worth any dollar value? Probably something, but probably not as much as the original Chainlink, right? But it's marketed as the world's biggest airdrop because, you bet your ass if people are saying you have a whole bunch of free coins if you just switch networks and go check out how much they're worth. People are going to want to do that. People are going to be curious. So it's easing the friction not only for users to switch over, but developers to switch over because they don't really have to redeploy their contracts technically. But it's also just a new playing ground, or a new playground rather, for people to build new and innovative stuff and to make the fees incredibly cheap and incredibly fast. So right now the fees are fractions of a penny on the testnet and 3-second block times. And it's literally basically the same thing as Ethereum. Like it feels exactly like Ethereum. You can still use your MetaMask and it can be interoperable. There's bridges to go back and forth. And there will be bridges not only between Ethereum and PulseChain, but between all these other, it's not a winner take all, but whatever top 4 or 5 blockchains emerge as kind of the main used ones, I think PulseChain will be up there along with, BNB, Solana, or whatever else you might think.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for filling me in on all this, data. It's great. It's
It's
definitely
a lot to take in.
Oh no, I mean it's fine by me. I love stuff like this. Like I have a photographic memory, so whenever I hear anyone talking on these streams of consciousness, I usually absorb it. And it's great that you're so, you know, you're so well aware of what you're sharing with the world, because I see a lot of people who get specifically into one project and they run a community centered around that, and they don't have nearly as much eloquence and sophistication as you have describing what's going on here.
Thanks. Yeah, and so to go along with that, to piggyback, the strategy is essentially there's horizontal integration and vertical integration, right? Richard Hart likes to use the analogy of McDonald's, right? If you got a McDonald's and it's all full of people, obviously he'd choose McDonald's. But if it's all full and you can't get any more people in there, if the line's out the door, you're not going to make a better McDonald's. You're going to make another McDonald's to take some of the load off, so people can go, across the street, down the block to that new McDonald's. So that's what PulseChain is. It's basically a horizontally integrated blockchain. But what we're doing over on PulseChain is a vertically integrated ecosystem where we have the store value app, which is HEX. We've got the trading app, which is pulsex. So pulsex.com is a clone of Uniswap, as Ethereum is a clone of PulseChain, as Bitcoin or HEX is a better Bitcoin. So, HEX is to Bitcoin, as PulseChain is to ETH, as pulsex is to Uniswap. And we're not reinventing the wheel here on any of it, but we're making our own walled garden that does play with other people. So it's, a wall with a couple of bridges and stuff. But we're going to have our ecosystem that a lot of money, I think, will be coming into and not wanting to leave, because it's as if you're going to a country where you're treated better. The fees are cheap. The transactions are incredibly fast. The community is already there. The products are basically filtered from Ethereum. So we're able to take, only some of the best stuff on Ethereum. After they were nice enough to beta test and so many projects got hacked, we can take a post-mortem and say, oh, well, Aave seemed to do good. Let's fork Aave over on PulseChain. And some of these other ones that people still really like, that haven't lost millions of dollars, that serve a necessary use case. Some of these lending protocols, like Liquid Loans, is a fork of Liquidity on Ethereum. So it's going to be really, really cool. There's going to be, I think, a lot of new attention, and PulseChain will be in the limelight for a while. And people might not want to go back to the old ways, to the more expensive chain.
Yeah, it's very sensible. I do understand that the fees side of things is really off-putting towards the retail investor. And I remember even before this kind of bull run kicked off, probably about 2020-ish timeframe, when the belief was just starting to re-enter the crypto market, it was really difficult to invest with fiat into a lot of projects. And then once we topped out into like April, May, that was when crypto.com would introduce like 100 new coins a week. They just started making it super easy to get into the market with fiat. And if you guys are old school, that like you needed Bitcoin to even buy any altcoins back in the day. So they're making this so much easier now, and it's good that, but what has it created? It's created massive congestion on Ethereum. So it's good that there's a solution, but I suppose currently at this very moment, HEX is still kind of bearing the brunt of the high gas fees, correct?
Yeah, HEX is a victim of its own success. Well, Ethereum is a victim of its own success, right? And the thing with HEX is that the unstake fees are going to become, they're expensive now. They're in the hundreds of dollars, but in 15 years, when the price of Ethereum is, over $10,000, and the code has to calculate over 5,000 days for your stake, each iteration, each day that it has to make a calculation over, costs more gas. And so it could be so astronomical that we're planning it early enough to protect ourselves from a 10-year from now problem.
Yeah. I don't know where that's going to be solved. I mean, I don't really understand the purpose of all of the future implementations regarding ETH outside of potentially tokenizing the entire stock market. So that is one protocol that's in the making, and through Ameribor, it is out there for people to go look up on their own. It'll be very interesting how that happens, though, because if they were to tokenize the entire stock market on ERC20, then that would make even worse. That would really make the problem become catastrophic. So I don't know. Also ETH 2.0 every month is seeming more and more like an impossibility, and there's already coins out there that have solved sharding and all the other things. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of hope that during this next year or so, people take the time to educate themselves, to learn a lot more about this technology in all regards, and not just think about the ROI or the making money side of things, because rich people sell and wealthy people never sell.
Dude, you're hitting all of our favorite talking points. I don't even know if you realize or not, but
No.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, really wealthy people take out, loans and never have to sell. They'll take out loans at the lows and whatnot. But
precisely. And that's a beautiful reason to have something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, is just to have the opportunity for collateralization, and have more access to the collateralization comparatively to other coins. But I do have a little bit of worry, just in my opinion, regarding shemitah and the exchanges and platforms for collateralizing crypto for loans, things like Celsius and BlockFi. I could
Those are
tell
wrecked.
the regulations are hitting them hard, and I do believe that shemitah will be a time where we start to see, or let's just call it the end of shemitah, because what they like to do is create a crash, and then their solution is regulations, right? So
Yeah.
that's always how they like to do it. They did the same shit with the dot-com bubble.
I mean,
Anywho,
wasn't it weird how Yellen just came out like 5 seconds after Luna crashed and said, "Hey, we need stablecoin regulation." It's like they were waiting for it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's how they do it. And there's two things to branch off of that. One, Terra Luna was the only coin that hit an all-time high during the December 4th dump that happened near the end of the year. It was the
Hmm.
only coin that hit an all-time high, okay? And then it rallied all the way up until, a couple months later. And then that date was an eclipse. So what's really interesting is this recent lunar eclipse, we just watched Luna go to zero, pretty much to fractions of a penny. And regardless of the exoteric stuff that they did regarding the Fed and, Yellen, etc., I just think it's really interesting how you have that esoteric side of it, where during the last eclipse at the end of 2021, we saw the only coin isolated hitting bullish prices was Terra Luna. And then on the flip side, it completely got slaughtered. And for the people that were creating a lot of conspiracy around Tether and making everyone feel like Tether was going to drop out at any moment, and they've been pushing this narrative, popularly pushing this narrative now for going on 2 years to 3 years. And I love how the one stablecoin that did actually tank and do what it did was the one tied to Luna. So it's like a very classic, like, look here, don't look over there effect of like getting everyone to think that, Tether was the problem, but in actuality, people thought that the stablecoin behind Luna was safe. So
Uh,
you see how they like to play it. It's all narrative and it's all sentiment. And what people need to do is
yeah.
do their own research and develop your own investment thesis and
Well,
do what you
it's
think is safest for yourself.
yeah, and it's all language too. I mean, well, it is a little serendipitous about the name Luna and then the cycles of the lunar cycle. But
Right.
yeah, it's all narratives and language, and how you talk about things really does matter. And we can craft a better narrative than the government and the powers that be can craft. I mean, we have decentralized lending protocols coming to PulseChain. Check out liquidloans.io or fiat.io. That's PHIAT.io. These are forks of existing successful projects. And that's the point of DeFi, right? Like the whole point of DeFi was to replace all the products at a bank, right? So HEX is replacing, the high interest savings account, but we have much more than that in traditional finance, right? We've got lending, we've got borrowing, we've got swaps and derivatives and all this crazy stuff, futures. If we can get everybody into our decentralized ecosystem by making better products and explaining them better, our magic made up internet money is better than the government's magic made up internet money. Simply put, that's a Richard Hart quote, of course. But I want to quickly address this tipped question. Thanks for the tip, Neto. Real quick, he wants to know about BitBoy calling Hex a flop on Twitter. I think that was a joke. You should look into that tweet a little bit more. He was joking around. He actually showed a Bitcoin chart, and the Bitcoin chart obviously fell. And he was just joking around because everybody likes to call everything a Ponzi. He's like, and he crossed out the word Bitcoin and wrote Hex, and he said, look at this Hex chart. It must be a Ponzi if it fell this many percent, right? Like only Ponzi's fall 85%. And then all the Bitcoin guys piled in like, yeah, Hex is a Ponzi, but they didn't even realize they were looking at like a Bitcoin chart. And he was just trying to prove a point that like just because something goes down in price doesn't mean it's a Ponzi scheme. But and then altcoins obviously are like leverage on Bitcoin. So clearly they're going to go down more, but they're going to also probably come back higher for the select few that have product market fit. So thanks for the tip, bro. But yeah, I think it's really going to be interesting to see how the macro scale plays out and how they're going to try to control. It's going to start with central bank digital currencies. I don't know if you want to have any thoughts about those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's in the works, and anyone who wants to go out of their way to study Agenda 2030, you can learn a little bit more about what the World Economic Forum and the United Nations have in plan for the world stage. And we know that Agenda 21 has been playing out pretty nicely. All the narratives are in alignment, and it's not conspiracy, it's fact. It's out there for anyone to go research. And what's really good about it all is you can kind of protect yourself from any incoming issues. But when it comes to the specificity of CBDCs and how they'll be implemented. I do believe that the first step of implementation would be you're going to have skyrocketing food prices and oil prices, and then this will price people out of their convenience and the privilege they have to access cheaper foods and affordable gasoline. And then the solution to that, because remember, it's always problem, reaction, solution. That's the Hegelian. So the solution to this will be an identification card that runs on blockchain technology, and this identification card will replace the passport, the regular driver's license, and all other identification systems. It'll be tied to your social security number and perhaps even your tax identification for your business. And then this will give you access to subsidized versions of those things I just talked about. So it'll be subsidized food and subsidized energy. Now, this might sound conspiracy like, but go look at Iran. They're practicing it. Look at Italy. They're practicing it. Look at China. They've been practicing it. And a lot of the world is in the process of switching towards it. And people think that the infrastructure is not ready for this. But I promise you, they've honed in on making sure that even in the third world, they're ready for this infrastructure. And it all developed very rapidly after the time frame of the pandemic. So what that leads into now is a government would be incentivized by having their own currency that is running on this particular blockchain tied to this identification system. So that's how they'll fix that problem. Because to give people the subsidized price, it would be way better for them to just give you, instead of a subsidized or a discount coupon for your local native currency, they just create their own currency and then distribute it to you for having that identification system. So it's really clever, and this is already in process. And I don't think America or I don't think America will get there that quick. I think some other nations that but you never know, bro. Like, I think after September and the crash that comes in housing, that may be the perfect moment to implement this.
Yeah, daddy government can step in to save the day. I think, yeah, Americans have deep within us this distrust of authority, just, the way we, came from England and civil wars and all that stuff. But so it's going to be hard to force us to do anything, but it does seem to be heading that way. And it does seem to be a pretty apocalyptic scenario that you're painting. So
yeah, and I don't want to worry anyone. Like, it's,
where's the opt-out button? Like, where do I eject? Like, is it crypto or like?
Well, I believe that it's like, unfortunately, it has to deal with mindset. Like, if you're someone that is aware of how to pivot in moments of catastrophe, like, remember, the most wealthy people on earth did make mistakes. They made mistakes. Like, you could look up Warren Buffett's track record. He made a lot of really like apocalyptic level mistakes, dealing with not only his money but many other people's money. Okay, but it was how he reacted to problems and the speed and the elusiveness of how he reacted to the problem. So as a being who is more aware, if you have the conscious awareness of all the stuff we're talking about today, instead of reacting to it emotionally, you can step back. You could take an inventory of the things that matter most in your life and the things that bother you about your life, and reassess. And I think a lot of the time people are living vicariously through whatever's happening, whether it be the drama on the world stage or politics, or, these are all social engineering mechanisms to keep people distracted. So you are not distracted. Not you. I'm talking about your community. You guys aren't distracted. You're here and you're trying to self-empower yourselves. You're trying to learn. You're trying to be part of an empowering community. And if you feel like you're a part of anything that's toxic, you need to get out of that. And right there, that is the opt-out button, because the opt-in button is giving the government and all of these powers that be your energy. Like, don't pay attention to them. Once you remove giving them so much of your attention, like, think about the world right now. Everyone wants to watch and talk about the same things. And
your attention is the most powerful resource on this planet, and everybody's fighting for it. Look at social media. It was designed with tactics that they typically use in slot machines, to literally siphon your attention. And that's the biggest currency, right? It's not actually money, it's human consciousness. And I do think that having a community like HEX, it helped me, especially during the time of the the lockdowns and all that. A lot of people got very depressed. Well, Hexicans were getting rich and patting each other on the back and creating the financial future that we wanted for ourselves and our loved ones. And that's what's going to matter going forward. I couldn't agree more. Starting your own communities, getting your own voice out there, and just having a goal and something to strive for, so that you're not part of somebody else's narrative, because there's plenty of distractions. We've got TV over here. We've got alcohol over there. We've got, drugs and whatever you want. to distract yourself from what's going on.
That's
But
so
but if,
that's so like so well said, and that's one of the things that I've been really happy about with what's happened with my community over the past year or so. Like lately during this market activity, because I've done my due diligence and speaking my truth and not pretending, I've been able to garner the type of individual that's at this level, you know? So now when we see corrections and all this stuff, like my community has over 2,000 people and we're all just like helping, you know, we're empowering each other. So it's just beautiful for me to see a day where the market's red and then I go onto my Discord for my community and everyone's happy, you know, like, or they're just at least doing something productive. They're talking about something productive. You need to change your life. Don't wait for someone to come change yours. So it's
yeah.
a beautiful thing to actually consider that no matter what darkness comes, like you have an opportunity to react to that and you should.
Yeah, and you have the power to change your reality by changing your self-image. I mean, the book Psycho Cybernetics talks about that. It's about who you think you are, and it's not what happens, but your reaction to what happens that actually makes you the person, right? So you're not a victim. And a lot of people have this victim mentality. A lot of people in the community right now, when the prices are down, you get to see who has a steady course, and then who kind of falters and gets fudded out, or becomes
100%.
very depressed or angry. And people that are prone to that, I try to preach just clear level-headedness. Don't give in to the haters. They're just trying to trigger you. They're also trying to siphon your attention for followers and clickbait. And which altcoin should I buy this week? Comment below. You think that's going to change anything in the world? Like, no, you're much better off just onboarding somebody to your narrative meme, which is basically like, I jokingly call it the cult of getting rich, but it's not just about getting rich. It's in HEX, it's about, empowering others for financial freedom, whatever that means to you. Obviously, you have to help yourself first, but once you've done that, you can go ahead and help those around you as well.
Yeah, the biggest way that people are going to be helped is through awareness. You know, like just that in and of itself, I think is massive. And remember, we had a private phone call before we set this up, and one of the things that I brought up to you was, luckily enough, I had somebody send me an interview of Richard Hart, and I'm the kind of guy, because I'm a creative and I'm an artist and I'm somebody that leads. Like I'm a leader. I don't like taking people's opinions without actually experiencing what I'm about to experience. So I've heard many negative things about Richard Hart. And also, I've never met Richard Hart. So what I'm about to say, like, I'm not, this isn't a belief system for me. But
Yeah.
anywho, I heard him talking to two like Playboy models or something on like a recent
Oh yeah.
podcast. And he literally opened it up talking about Joe Rogan podcast that was with another individual, and they were breaking down CBDCs and the purpose of them and everything that I just told you guys before. I've been talking about now regarding CBDCs and digital identification systems tied to subsidized foods and etc. Richard Hart said this to two Playboy models, and
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here like, we're like 5 minutes into this interview. These kind ladies don't really know anything about what this guy's talking about. They're just like fangirling, and
Mhm.
respect to them. But I'm just saying, like, it was pretty mind blowing that he, as this flashy kind of showing off his wealth, he also gave a red pill. And I
Yeah.
think the more of those, that just awareness, so I tell people, it's not all about the flashy, like, he's a marketer, right? He's doing all this driving Lambos and shit to market
Oh
himself,
yes.
and that's a tactic, and it works very well for a lot of people. But outside of that, like, pay attention to the wisdom, because you are going to get some of that if you keep your ears open. And I'm not saying that I'm a fan of anyone or any of that. Like, I respect, at the end of the day, until I meet somebody and talk with them one-on-one, I have no clue how they really are as a person. But with that being said, I appreciated that moment of being candid, that he shared such a very hard to swallow truth, because many people aren't ready to learn about the CBDCs and that sort of conversation.
Yeah, people with the ears to listen can listen to Richard Hart now and still get lots of valuable information. Like, I think those models, even, they did somewhat understand what they were talking about. They found it so interesting that they wanted to, continue to hang out and talk to him. And so he does drop a lot of red pill truths and a lot of alpha, especially if you go back to his older videos when he wasn't wearing Rolexes and he wasn't racing his Lambos all around. He was still preaching a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of what I've learned about crypto comes from him, and he's just on the path to, you know, self-actualization, like all of us as well.
Right.
Everyone's in a different stage, but
Well,
the
he
people that
learned
can't get
the game that if you wear the Rolex and you wear the Lamborghini, then people actually want to fucking pay attention to you, which is sad.
it is sad,
And
and some people
he's
want to get
admitted this.
outraged recreationally,
Yeah,
you
he's
know, and
admitted this, and I agree with him. Like, you know, it's a big reason why I don't show my identity. First reason is I'm trying to protect myself. Second reason, I've already been in business models and doing stuff in my life where I showed myself, and I know what it brings. So I've just learned my lessons over the years. But I do know for a fact what Richard Hart talks about regarding the marketing side of his agenda. It does increase the ears and the eyes that are forecasted towards you.
yeah.
So he's
Even if
very
80%
intelligent
hate
for
you
that.
and 20% like you, the 20% of a larger pie matters more than just trying to make everybody like you. Right.
Agreed.
Well, we covered a lot of stuff, man. Oh, let me just address the tipped question before I forget. Thank you again, Neto, for the tip. Do I think HEX or PHEX will reach 20 cents again this year? I think it's more realistic for PHEX to reach 20 cents. Like Waters was saying, if you scroll back, it's realistic for HEX to at least tap, you know, in the 15 to 20 cent range, but then probably continue on down in the bear market. We're thinking the bear market could hold out till at least September. But yeah, that's I guess the prediction. 20 cents is fine. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a strong affinity to that price in particular, but I think it's obviously more likely that PHEX in the long run will reach that, because I think people are going to sell off their EHEX once the fork happens.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, the play with HEX was probably something like a rebound in the next 2 to 3 months up to the 15-cent range, and then probably a rejection, lower high put in place with a really noticeable pullback into October and November towards the end of this year. And that's probably the region of the 4-cent level. And that would be a fucking awesome opportunity, because you're talking about a 90% decline in price from top. And, you know, especially if the community really does what they are saying they're going to do and they hold, because, you know, after a sell off that violent, it's really
Yeah.
the test of the project if it's going to make it.
Yeah. Well, it's provable on chain, right? We can see that there's new wallets being created every day. There's new stakers being created every day. And once you enter the staker class, as far as I'm concerned, as long as your stake isn't, you know, a week long or a month long and it's on the yearly time scale, you have vowed to basically hold up the price. And in with all that free time that you were saved by not looking at the screen and trying to trade, a lot of people choose to go pump their own bags and go spread the good word. And you know, trading, obviously, it's a zero-sum game. You know, there's every winner for every loser, but investing over the long term can be very positive sum, because wealth is a positive sum game. We can create something of value, and the more people we spread it to, I think that's why I think onboarding and adoption and user experience are the primary things we should be focused on. That's really the only thing that matters, is providing new people with a good experience.
Oh, that's so, like, you literally just said the words of Steve Jobs. Like,
Oh,
Steve Jobs, like, during a time where he was giving some sort of presentation, he was open to the public for questions, and somebody sort of like bashed him, but his response was so, like, such a mic drop. But essentially what he was saying to that individual was, our focus is user experience. So, like, the price being a specific amount or this, that, and the third, it's like that's what average people pay attention to. But what the world really wants is a better user experience, and that's what will transcend the timeline forever. You know, not just be a pump and dump,
mhm.
whatever. And we know that to be true because look at what Apple did. You know, and
Yes.
they don't have a perfect track record. If you study Steve Jobs and his track record, it was a lot of failures, but his response to his failures was immaculate.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, his ethos is in line with ours, and we do have the core product, which is perfect and immutable with 100% uptime, and a lot of upfront work went into making the HEX smart contract. But now we're focusing on the products around HEX, you know, things like Staker app that are going to give people that experience to make them stick around and stand the test of time. Staker app, you can go to gostaker.com. It's going to be basically like the Robinhood for HEX and PulseChain.
Awesome.
And yeah, we're focusing on that building the ecosystem, which is much more important than just, you know, getting a few more followers or trying to pay some influencers to talk about your coin for a week. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know how much time you have. Did you want me to give a brief Gematria presentation?
please.
Just okay, sure. So, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm sharing the correct screen. You let me know in right now.
Got it. I'll pull this
Beautiful.
up. All right, guys, direct your attention to the screen.
Okay. So you're going to see as I hover over these little boxes, you're going to see a little thing show up down here, which will show you the letters and the numbers. So essentially, what Gematria is it's taking a letter and it's turning it into a number. So A equals 1, B equals 2, etc. And then, as you know, Z would just be given 26. We have 26 letters in the alphabet. That's the easiest way to describe what Gematria is. So as you type in words, it will calculate it because we have this handy calculator. So I'm just going to play around with this really quickly to show you. This is the name of the creator of HEX, correct? Richard
Mhm.
Hart. And you're sure that's spelled correctly, right?
Yeah, that's his stage name. Yes, his
Beautiful.
technical name is Richard Schuler, but yeah, we can go Richard Hart.
Awesome. And provide me with that at a future date so that way I could decode that even further because I am actually going to work on a full blown hex decode. I'll go through all the same decoding principles that I do for other coins. And this one's just a very quick tutorial for your community, just to really,
Sweet.
just to try to like show you the power of Gematria. So with this being said, I'm just going to hop over to this chart really quickly and you're going to see that the all-time high date for this particular coin was sitting around the 9th of September into the 10th of September. So I just want you guys to remember September 9th into September 10th of 2021. It's very easy. So I'm going to go over here to this date calculator, and this is going to get really interesting. So you're going to see I'm going to type in September 9th of 2021, and we're going to have this in this column. Don't pay attention to the right column. Just look right here. You have 9/9 of 2021. And this date left 113 days left in the year, just like Richard Hart's name equals 113 in Gematria. So this is where people would be like, oh, Jordan, well, that's a coincidence. That's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if you want it to be that way, that's fine. So let's break it down a little bit further. So as I showed you a moment ago, Hex hit its all-time high on the date between the 9th into the 10th. And one thing I'll preface with really quickly that I should have said at the beginning, um, Matt actually provided me with this chart that I was showing you. So there are going to be different dates regarding when Hex hit its price all-time high. Because if you go on CoinMarketCap, I have to admit, I think CoinMarketCap's data for Hex is not correct. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, definitely the market cap itself metric is wrong. I mean,
Okay.
it ranks us purposely way lower than
Yeah.
it should be on blockchain data.
Well, the all-time high is like 2 months off also, and it's random.
Really?
It's like November something, and Hex wasn't even close to 50 cents in the month of November. So what I'm
Hmm.
trying to say right now is you might have different charts than I have, but this is the one that Matt provided me with. Sorry, it's
I
this
provided you the Uniswap, yeah, the
exactly.
Uniswap chart. So that should be all on chain, and that's where 90% of our volume is done. So
Right. I just wanted to let you know that though, because there is different data on the all-time high price and date that it happened according to the first chart that we started this podcast with. So I'm just letting you know. I want
sure.
people to be accurate and aware that I'm 100% transparent. And I just find it pretty amazing that on this specific chart that has the most amount of chart data, the date of September 9th, again, leaving the 113 days left in the year, and we're seeing Richard Hart's name give us this 113. You could see my Gematria screen right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So another thing to mention is this date that was September 9th of 2021 also gives us 252 days in the year. So it's the 252nd day of the year. And the reason why this number is so important for that all-time high is because 252 is a palindrome of itself. So it is 52 and 25 as one number, all right? And the price Hex hit on this exact date was 52 cents. So it hit the 52-cent level on the date that leaves 113 days left in the year. and showed you the price. And again, this isn't easy stuff to find. It's not designed to be easy. It's coded into the market. It's that extra layer that gives people, you know, what's really happening in this market behind the scenes. So another thing I wanted to show you guys was if you go to this chart back to this time frame over here, this all-time high was probably the first noticeable all-time high for HEX, because then it followed by a big drastic, like about, you know, 80% drop or so. But this date giving you the 1st of November. So when you look at that date in just written down, it would be 11 for November and a 1 for the day of the month. That's the 111. So I think it's really interesting that it hit around this price level exactly on that date, but we'll go a little bit further. So I want to show you the date numerology of November 1st. It's really mind-blowing stuff. So that in 2020, yep, it was. So that was in 2020. And you're going to see something amazing. So the date numerology for this specific date was 52. And we're seeing a pattern here because we know that HEX has hit 52 cents as its all-time high. So it's almost like this first all-time high that happened. This all-time high that happened all the way back in November of 2020 told you what the all-time price would be. Like,
Wow.
just according to the way the date and the numerology was all set up. So again, the current all-time high for HEX is 52 cents, according to multiple charts. So there's going to be a swing and a deviation depending on the slippage and premium, etc. But I do think that's pretty amazing. So this would be the last thing that I leave you with, because I don't want to complicate things too much. But as we were talking about with September 9th into September 10th, I just want to show you one note about September 10th. It should be the 9, 10, and you're seeing the chart with the dates, right?
Yes.
Currently? Okay. So 9/10 of 2020.
Oh wait, I'm seeing the price chart still. Is that what you mean?
Apologies.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Beautiful. So I think this is one last thing to leave on, talking about the transition dates and a little bit of the power behind them. The reason why I call it a transition date and why I consider this is because in the United States of America, while it's the 10th, in Australia, it'll be the 11th. Okay. So when we're looking at time as a whole across the whole globe, we need to consider that there's a window of time. So remember, we were just talking about how the all-time high hit on the 11th of November. That's 111. This date of September 11th of 2020 left 111 days in the year. And the date numerology right here is called standard date numerology. It's when you just take the single digits and add them all up together, and that gives you 15. All right. So I'm going to go over here to the Gematria calculator, and you're going to see that HEX in the Chaldean cipher, which is one of the ones that I personally use, is giving you that 15. So this is really powerful because this is tied in on a bunch of levels. But let's just say that HEX hit its all-time high around September 9th and September 10th for a reason. It was because it was coded in to the coin. All right. This is amazing how this all aligned all around this exact time with the name of the project and Richard Hart's name to the exact dates. And one final thing to mention is sometimes when people are doing Gematria or decoding, they'll reduce down their numbers. So 15 gets reduced down to 6, which is really nice that this calculator just does all this for me. But you can see it gets reduced down to 6. And a hex or hex is a hexagon. That's what it's, even his logo on his chain that Richard Hart always wears. It's the hexagon. Okay. So a hexagon is a 6-sided polygon. And it's just amazing how in this Chaldean cipher, which is the most ancient form of society that was astronomers, and they did astrology and they kept track of it. If you wanted to know a little bit more about the Chaldeans, you could go do some research on the side. But I love using this Chaldean cipher. And I just think it's absolutely amazing how the name of the coin even adds up to the polygon sides of the I mean, it's absolutely amazing. So that's all for that quick decode, but I do have a deeper decode going for HEX, breaking down all of the price action, the numbers, why it hits specific prices on specific dates, way more in depth than what I just did. And I'll break down the logo. all of the esoteric qualities
Yeah.
to the logo itself and the sacred geometry behind it. And I believe Richard is very, very aware. He's a
A
smart
lot of that
guy.
was intentional, yes. And I mean, yeah, you can call a lot of this synchronicity or serendipity or just coincidence, you know, depending on your worldview. But Hex was chosen, you know, the number 666, you know, freaks a lot of people out. Maybe it just gets the conspiracy theory crowd for marketing. Maybe it's something more. The inflation rate was chosen to be 3.69%. I think that was just because of Richard's, you know, wanting to pay respect to Nikola Tesla. But then also there's going to be 33 validator nodes in the PulseChain ecosystem, and that was a number chosen on purpose as well. You know, you
Yeah,
can
so
make
right
all the
now,
Illuminati references or whatever, but yeah.
right now, today, Richard Hart has 137,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel, and 137 is the 33rd prime number. So that's a really powerful number. And I just think it's interesting on this exact date that he hit that subscriber amount. We saw Hex wick down to a new low in the structure. So there's so much to say about this, but I do believe that the guy is aware. I just look at his website even, and I'm seeing all the number repetition between the number 55 and he really likes the number 5 and 6. It's showing up a lot in his code.
Oh yeah. So the maximum length you can stake your Hex for is 5,555 days.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's clear as day that he's you said 5555
Yep.
or 5 5s.
4 5s.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy's very interesting because I see him playing with the numbers in the way that he's setting up everything. So that's where my work comes in handy because I teach people the meaning behind the numbers, the meaning behind the symbols, the logos, and why it's all this way. You know, whether Richard Hart meant it or not, but I think he's aware. I think he's one of the people that is very aware. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. And for people that are really confused about what's going on here, definitely check out my channel because I break this stuff down all the time.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate all the hard work, and we'd love to see some future analysis, I'm sure, for those that are receptive to it. Really quick, I want to address the tipped comments in the chat. So Palladus, thanks for the tip. Coffee, do you think that the sell-off we're seeing now is part of the HEX dip due to PLS? People have removed liquidity. Yeah, so you're right. People have removed liquidity, and I think the dip is simply due to panic selling across the board due to macro conditions and probably due to PulseChain delays as well. So if you want to give a reason to it, that's kind of the Occam's razor reason. But Maddie, hey, hold on a second. Where'd your comment go? I want to make sure I address you. What's up, Maddie? Good to see you in the chat. Thanks for the tip, man. That's very, very generous. I will respond to your DM about the meetup, and depending on what day it is, I might be able to come. So I'm so bad at responding to DMs. I just get so much spam, but let me scroll through and respond to you after the stream, Maddie. Thanks for watching, dude. I'll get back to you soon. All right, guys. Let's see. What is the chat saying? A lot of people think this is really interesting. A lot of people are into the mystical woo-woo stuff. I'm sure some people are like, yeah, this is BS. But hey, you know, whatever you guys think, I mean, that's all valid. But I really like what you're doing, Waters, and I appreciate the time. Is there anything you wanted to add in terms of you know, what your analysis is?
No, well, you know, my number one thing isn't to convince anyone. That's one of the biggest reasons why I do technical analysis is because if you don't find the Gematria numerology applications useful for you, or they are seemingly mysticism that you don't agree with or believe in, that's completely fine. I believe my TA that I've shared over the past 2 years has proven, you know, my methodologies. What I found in my work with studying the charts for at least a year and a half or so before the channel became a thing and before I started growing my channel was that I was missing something in my analysis. And that application of Gematria, numerology, astrology actually took my work to the next level. And I was a professional trader able to pay my bills for around 6 months to 1 year before my channel even took off. And I had private clients, I had people I was teaching, and they were the ones that pushed me to making my own channel. So think about it. Like I had a base knowledge in this stuff going back, you know, probably 15 years now. And
Wow.
when I got here to this alignment with seeing the charts and going about it in the way that I was, it was just so much better for me to have that extra layer of this esoteric knowledge as opposed to just looking at it from an emotional perspective or a community-based perspective or anything like that.
Wow. Cool, man. Well, let's end on a high note. I don't even know if you have any predictions for the next cycle all-time high. We can end with a little hopium for the people if they
Yeah,
want it.
let's do it. Just give me a second. I'll kind of give you guys what I think is the next big the next that's kind of what this person wants to know.
Yeah, I guess super long term or
Hmm.
3 years from now or whatever it may be.
$2.50
Wow.
as like the first really noticeable shoot towards breaking all-time high. That'll probably be your first big move to the upside, and then it would have a classic hex 60%, 70% correction from there, and then it would shoot even higher for sure. Given the performance that this coin's capable of and the standard performance that some of these coins can do, especially when adoption comes, which we're not even close to true adoption in this sector. Yeah, I would see even something crazy like a $5 to $6 hex in 2025 or something like that as a possibility.
Amazing. We
But
love
that's
that.
but that's not anytime soon, guys. So like
I
I'm
know.
not
I
trying
know.
to but I believe part of my decode that I'll share, Matt,
Sure.
regarding hex and all of that information will cover some of my outlooks because I use my Gematria to determine price levels.
Okay. Someone's asking about where is this channel? Guys, in the description below, like and subscribe. Waters above. It's in the description below.
Yeah. So my channel's Waters Above Crypto. I only run my YouTube channel. I don't have Twitter or any extra social media platforms at all. So you'll know it's me when you find my channel. And then through there, I have a Patreon. I do weekly podcasts over there, and I cover a bunch of altcoins. And that's kind of my opportunity to give everyone in my community like a really well thought out market wrap up. And besides that, I do. That's connected to a Discord we have with a community. So I'm definitely going to be sharing this interview with them, and I would love to see the integration. Just beautiful to connect with you and learn more about Hex and learn more about what you're doing.
Oh yeah, cross pollination. It's great. Well, thanks, man. We'll end it here. Thanks for coming, everybody, and thanks for listening. Like and subscribe, and also buy some merch. We got Hex Tears of Hex Haters mugs and non-financial advice hats. So if you're into that kind of thing. All right, bros and girls, I'll talk to you on the next one. Bye.